Hey guys, what's up? My name is Daylighter. Welcome to this video where what we're going to do is continue in building our very first game ready asset. In this video, we're going to go ahead and look at setting up the bake. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So, in the last video, we had gone ahead and created all the UVs and packed them inside the UV space. Now, what we're going to do is, as I just said, we're going to go ahead and bake the high poly and low poly mesh. So, what we're going to use is a technique called or referred to as an exploding bake, which means that we're going to separate this mesh into pieces and then bake them individually, but we're going to bake them all at the same time. Now, if we take a look at our mesh, there are certain things that actually don't really need to be baked. For example, there's this piece here that's going to be wood, doesn't really need to be baked. The piece here that's going to be the sort of gold outer edge doesn't need to be baked. However, the rest of these things do need to be baked, so we need to go ahead and bake the speakers. We need to, or at least what I think is the speakers. We need to go ahead and bake the normals for the dials here. We don't need to bake any normals for the buttons, and we can go ahead and bake in some normals for our pieces of, I guess, these metal pieces here. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started on setting this up. And yeah, we don't need to bake the back here. So what we need to do is, first of all, we're going to go ahead and give our low poly mesh a name. So let's call this low underscore radio. And let's unhide all. And this time it's going to ask us, do we want to unhide all the objects? And this is referring to the objects that are hidden that are on the high poly layer. So I'm going to go ahead and press yes. And I'm just going to temporarily hide selected, which is going to go ahead and hide the low poly mesh. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select or take all these and attach them together. So before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and choose File, Save As, and I'm just going to go ahead and press the little plus button here so we have a backup here. So let's go ahead and take this and let's go ahead and choose Attach. And I'm going to press the little box next to the Attach and go ahead and press Control A for all. And press attach, and that's going to go ahead and attach all these pieces together. Then I can go ahead and give this a name such as high radio for high polygon radio. Now with that being said, what we need to now go ahead and do is take our high poly model, and we're going to go ahead and add a editable poly on top of this. Okay, now the reason we are adding an edit poly on top of this is because what we want to be able to do is to, for example, select a piece of geometry, say for example, this piece, and move this away from the mesh, okay? And then, oops, let's press no. And then once we turn this off, we're gonna then have the polygon mesh snap back together. So let's go ahead and undo all those actions and leaves us with something like this. And now we can go ahead and unhide all, and let's go ahead and select our low poly mesh. Let's go ahead and convert this to editable poly, so we collapse the stack, and let's go ahead again and add a edit poly on top of this. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and select our high poly mesh and just hide this for now, and then I'm gonna go and select the different pieces of our mesh here. So I'm gonna go ahead and select this. And let's see. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the left view, and I'm going to go ahead and, first of all, change this to a rectangular marquee selection. And I'm going to go and take all of these pieces, with the exception of the back here, and I'm just going to move this forward. So let's go ahead and push this forward. And then I'm going to deselect I guess the wood area, and I'm going to go ahead and push this forward. I'm going to go ahead and deselect these speakers and push this forward again. And you can see here what we're doing here. So I'm just going to go ahead and deselect, let's see, yeah, the back piece here, and move these forward. And then deselect this. And move this forward. And we can deselect this and move these forward. And I think that's going to be enough space for these pieces. Okay. So now what we got is our mesh has been, I guess, sort of separated and pushed forward. And so we need to do this. So when we add our UV, our normal projection on here, we want to be able to deal with each one of these pieces of geometry individually. Okay, so once we've done that, what we need to do now is unhide all. And we're going to do the same thing here. Now this may take a few moments comparatively because actually we have more geometry here. And we need to try and line this up. Now it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but you want to try and get it as close as possible. The closer it is, the better it will be. So you can see that it's going to run a little slow. And this is due to the amount of polygons here we're trying to manipulate. Okay, so I think this is about good for the first one. And as I said, remember, we don't actually need to make this 100% perfect for this particular piece because we don't really need too much of that baking data. So let's go ahead and move this forward. Now this one we want to try and get a little closer, a little accurate, because we want to get the speaker information nicely in there. So I think like this is pretty good. And let's go ahead and deselect these speakers. And let's keep pushing this forward. Okay. Let's keep pushing forward and let's find a position here, the correct location. And just pushing this forward a little slow here. So I think about here is pretty good because we want to be able to encompass the entirety of this these pieces here. So let's push this forward. Let's keep going. Okay, let's push this back a little. And I think about here is pretty good. Let's push this back just a little. All right, I think this is going to be okay. We can go ahead and deal with this later. Now, if we remember correctly, this piece areas, I'm not too worried about this because we can just go ahead and erase a lot of the normal data that's going to come off this because both of these surfaces are quite smooth anyway. But we can just sort of get this into position if we want. Let's roughly place this where we want it to be. So I think about there is going to be pretty good. Let's deselect this and let's move on. Let's go ahead and push all these forward to the rest of our mesh here. All right, like this. And all right, so that's that completed. So we have all these pieces already, and if we go ahead and turn this on and off, we're now gonna be able to snap this backwards and forward. So this is our entire mesh. It has been exploded, and we are ready to go ahead and add the UVs. Sorry, not the UVs. The normal projection. So let's go ahead and go to, let's see, we need to go over to rendering. And with the low poly mesh selected, let's go ahead and choose render to texture. And let's go and set so many settings up. So let's go ahead and choose enabled. We need to go ahead and choose pick. And I'm going to go ahead and select the, oops, looks like we have the high poly mesh selected. Let's see. Okay, let's try again. Rendering, render to texture, enable, and we need to go ahead and select the high mesh. There we go. Choose add, and let's just wait a few moments for Max to go ahead and generate a cage here. And you can see that it is a complete mess, but that's okay. We can go ahead and fix that in a moment. So underneath the options here, let's go to options. Let's go to setup. Let's set the filter, not the filter, let's turn to enable global super sampling, and let's go ahead and close this. And we'll go ahead and close this. Under the mapping coordinates, we want to make sure that we use existing channel for both, which means that we're going to use the existing UVWM wrap which we created. We're going to go ahead and choose add, and we're going to go ahead and choose normal map and choose add elements. And for the purposes of testing, I'm going to go ahead and choose 512 by 512, and we can now go ahead and close this for now. So what we need to do now is, you can see on top of the modify stack here, it's going to head and add a projection modifier. So we just go to cage, and let's just go ahead and choose reset. So we reset the cage, and let's go ahead and push this just slightly. So it's slightly bigger than most of our meshes. And then what I like to do is I like to go ahead and choose export and name this cage. Okay, and then let's go ahead, press the H key. So bring up the list of everything that's in the scene. Go ahead and select cage and press OK, and then go ahead and press M. And what I'd like to do is go ahead and create a nice bright color, such as this green here, and apply this to the cage. Okay, so what this does is, this allows me to see any problems with the cage here, and I can go ahead and I can manually modify that. Now, the one thing I can't do with this cage is I can't add geometry. If I add geometry, I'm going to get some issues. But I can go ahead and manipulate the geometry. So in this particular case, I need to push this out so it fully encompasses this. And, you know, just like using any other tool in Max, you can use polygons, vertexes, anything else you feel comfortable in modifying this. Just so long as you do not add additional geometry, you should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and move this out. Okay, so this is fine. And maybe I can push this out just a little. And push this up. And let's have a look. Yep, so we need to go ahead and do the side here. So I'm just holding down the left control and clicking so I can select multiple edges. Okay, this one looks to be fine. Let's have a look under here. Is this? Yep, this looks to be fine. Now I can probably push this back a little and then take this and push it forward. Maybe, okay, maybe not. Okay, that's okay. Now let's see with this piece. Again, we can go ahead and select the front face here and push this forward. And this looks like it's pretty good. Let's have a look over here. So this looks like, let's see. Okay, so you can see that there's a slight problem here. That's okay. So what I'm going to do with this piece is I'm going to select this and I'm going to add a push. So let's find a push just to this piece here and just push this out. There we go. I think that's exactly what we want here. So we just push this piece of geometry out so it fully encompasses the entirety of this mesh. This one, let's see. I think this is going to be fine. If not, we can just fix that later anyway. Okay, let's have a look at the bottom of these. So they look pretty good. In the dials here, these look pretty good. Now, the dial here, we're going to get some slight issues here on this mesh, where this is overlapping, and we're going to get an issue here where this is overlapping. So let's have a look here. let's see. I think it's gonna be fine. So, I guess what we can do is let's hide this, and let's go and choose hold, and let's go ahead and take this piece of geometry and this piece of geometry and push this forward, and we can do this at the same time actually with this and this. So let's push this forward like so, and let's do the same thing here. Let's take these two and these two, and let's push these also forward. So something like this. Okay. So let's go ahead and press H. Let's go ahead and select our cage. And it looks like our cage was destroyed in doing so. That's okay. Let's go ahead and select the cage. Let's go ahead and press delete. And if we go back to our low poly mesh and add the projection back on top, it should have retained that. So let's go ahead and choose projection. Oops, we want to select our low poly mesh, sorry. Okay, there we go. So so it looks like this has been retained. So all we have to do is just go ahead and re-export this. And then select the cage. Press M, and let's just go ahead and reapply this to these pieces so we can see here that okay, so we just need to go ahead and select this. Let's go ahead and add that push back on top there. So it looks like we just need to go ahead and quickly fix some of these issues again. So I think that's okay. This one's okay. Let's fix these, okay. So we just need to go back and fix these pretty quick because we made a slight mistake. All right. All right, so let's go back over here. So now you can see we have these and they all do pretty good. I'm not too worried that these are intersecting anything like that. So with that being said, we can now go back to our high poly mesh. Let's go ahead and press, low poly mesh like this. And then we can go ahead and choose import, press H, and let's go ahead and choose our cage. Choose pick, and press H again, select the cage, and we can go ahead and delete this. And then with the low poly mesh selected, we now have our baking information nicely set up. So let's go ahead and give this a test render. So let's go to render, render to texture, and with a 512 by 512, let's go ahead and choose render and choose continue, and let's see what we get. So we're going to get some slight issues here. So you can see though that most of this data is pretty good. So I just want to go ahead and fix these pieces. So I'm going to set both of these, and I'm just going to push these out just a little more, which I hope will help this. So under push amount, with just all selected, let's go ahead and push this up a little. And then try again. Render to texture, and let's try again. Just going to overwrite the old file here. Okay, so that's okay. I mean, there's a slight error here. We got some slight errors up here, which is really dealing with this wood piece, which is fine. So all these small issues here, we can go ahead and fix those in Photoshop. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and set this to be a large scale render. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to do a 4K texture here. So 4096 by 4096. And I'm going to go ahead and choose a location here. I'm just going to drop this onto my desktop. So I have this old radio and textures, and let's go ahead and call this radio underscore nm for normal, and press save. And we could choose 24 bits because we don't need an alpha channel here. And when that's done, let's go ahead and press render. So it's going to go ahead and render out a large texture for us. And once that's done, we can go ahead and apply this to our mesh, and then we can look at dealing with these red errors. Actually, let's let this bake first, and we can re-render this without those red errors. So I'll pause the video here, and we'll see what we get when we come back. Alright, so we're back here, and the bake has almost finished. There's just a small section at the bottom here that's not baked. Now, looking at this in a higher resolution, I can see there's a few more issues that I would like to fix before we move on. But you can see that most of this, actually, the detail is actually quite good. Now, the main issue that I want to fix here, just because I don't want to do this in Photoshop, is these very small red areas here on the dials. And the rest of that can be easily fixed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to these dials here, and let's see what we've got. Maybe we can just do it in Photoshop. Yeah, it's okay. So we'll just deal with this with Photoshop. So we've baked out our normal here. The rest of the information we can fix inside Photoshop. There's no point in dealing with those sort of things right now. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a save of this file. I'm going to press Control S. I'm going to go ahead and turn off these pieces over here. Oops, on the projection, sorry, turn this off. And I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to make a new copy. And the new copy is going to be without the high poly mesh here. Okay, so we only have this, and now we can go ahead and deal with our normal and our textures just within this single file. And if we need to go back into the old file, we can go ahead and rebake anything that we may need. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and add our normal map into our scene here and see what it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead, select an empty slot. I'm going to go to bump, set this to be 100. Next to the none, I'm going to go ahead and select normal bump, and I'm going to go ahead and choose normal, bitmap, and I'm going to go to desktop, and I have the old radio, textures, and you can see I have the radio normal map here. And let's go ahead and apply this, and let's see what we get. So let's go ahead and apply this, and let's go back, and let's go ahead and set this to be real time. And so now you can see we have our texture information on here, and it looks pretty good. So what we're ready to do next is go ahead and look at adding the texture information, and how we can go ahead and start to enhance this this file here. So even here we can see that this is nice straight edges. You can see that actually it looks nice and smooth, and we have this slight issue here that we can go ahead and fix in Photoshop, so I'm not too worried about that. We can go ahead and smoothen out some of these areas. Okay, so I think with that being said, that is the very core of setting up the normal map. In the next video, we're going to take a look at cleaning up the normal map, adding in some additional information such as the name here on the buttons and things like that. And then we'll be ready to move on to start the texturing process. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and until next time, bye bye for now.